Vanessa Mars stood outside a fancy restaurant, staring at her reflection in the window. She barely recognized herself in the beautiful dress her best friend, Christy, had made her wear. The soft fabric felt strange against her skin as she shifted uncomfortably. She knew people were looking at her, probably wondering if she belonged in such a high-class place. "You can do this," she whispered, gripping her small purse tightly. "Let us know which city you're watching from, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel." Vanessa had worked hard for 10 years, always putting her family and responsibilities first. She had 2 jobs and never had time for herself. But tonight, after lots of convincing, she finally agreed to go on a blind date set up by Christy. The restaurant was so fancy that the menu didn't even show prices. At the entrance, the host looked at her with a polite but curious smile. "Your name, miss?" he asked. Vanessa took a deep breath. "I'm meeting someone. The reservation should be under Brownson," she said, thankful that Christy had at least told her that much. The host checked his tablet, then nodded. Yes. Mr. Brownson's table. Right this way, please." Vanessa followed him through the restaurant, feeling out of place among the wealthy customers dressed in expensive clothes and sparkling jewelry. Everything around her, the soft cream-colored walls, the shining crystal chandeliers, felt overwhelming. Then she saw him. Sitting at a table in the corner, a man was focused on his phone. He was, without a doubt, the most handsome man Vanessa had ever seen. His dark hair was styled just right. His sharp jawline looked like it could cut glass, and his suit probably cost more than her car. But it wasn't just his looks. There was something about the way he carried himself, like he was confident and in control of everything around him. Vanessa was so drawn to him that she barely noticed when the host stopped at a different table. Instead, her feet carried her straight toward the man. The moment she reached him, he looked up, his steel-gray eyes meeting hers. "Hi," Vanessa said, her heart pounding. "I'm Vanessa. I believe you're my blind date." Something flashed across his face for a second. Was it a surprise? Amusement? But whatever it was, it disappeared quickly. He stood up gracefully, towering over her. "Please," he said in a deep voice that sent shivers down her spine. "Have a seat." Vanessa sat down, still feeling like something wasn't quite right. Christy had told her that Brownson was a nice guy with a regular job. But this man? He was anything but ordinary. Trying to break the awkwardness, Vanessa said, "I have to admit when Christy suggested this, I wasn't sure. Blind dates aren't my thing." He gave her a small smile. "And what is your thing, Vanessa?" The way he said her name made her stomach flutter. "Usually, working 2 jobs," she admitted. "Not much time for dating." He leaned forward, seeming genuinely interested. "2 jobs? Tell me about them." Vanessa was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him. She told him about her job at a community college during the day and how she managed a bookstore in the evenings. She even mentioned her dream of becoming a fashion designer, something she hardly ever talked about. He listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions that made her open up even more. Before she knew it, an hour had passed. "I've been talking too much," she said, embarrassed. "Tell me about yourself. What do you do?" For a moment his face darkened, as if she had touched on something sensitive. Then he simply said, "Business, acquisitions and strategy, mostly." "That sounds intense." "It can be," he replied. "But right now I'm more interested in your dreams. You mentioned sustainable fashion." Vanessa blinked, surprised that he had remembered that detail. "Yes, I think fashion should be affordable and good for the environment, but I haven't had time to pursue it." "Why not?" he asked, his tone serious. She hesitated. "Well, life, I guess. I have bills to pay and responsibilities to take care of. Dreams don't always pay the rent." His expression turned serious. "Dreams shouldn't be sacrificed for practicality, Vanessa. They should be pursued with everything you have." His words hit her harder than she expected, as if he was speaking from personal experience. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Christy. OMG, Vanessa. I'm so sorry. Brownson got called into emergency surgery. He's a doctor at Mass General. Can we reschedule? Vanessa's heart stopped. Slowly, she looked up at the man sitting across from her, the man she had been talking to for the past hour. Her stomach dropped. I think there's been a mistake, she whispered. He studied her carefully, his expression impossible to read. Has there? He asked. Vanessa swallowed hard. My blind date, he's not coming. He got called into surgery. He's a doctor. The man leaned back slightly, considering her words. Interesting, he said, a small smirk playing on his lips. Vanessa had no idea what was going to happen next. Vanessa's hand shook as she grabbed her purse. I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table. You've been nice, and I wasted your time. The man interrupted. Lucas. She stopped, confused. What? My name is Lucas Martins, he said, leaning back in his chair. His gaze held her in place. And you haven't wasted my time, Vanessa Mars. Hearing her full name sent a chill down her spine. She hadn't told him her last name. He had known all along that she wasn't supposed to be there. Why didn't you say anything? She asked, her embarrassment turning into confusion. Lucas smiled, and for the first time, he looked younger, but also a little dangerous. Because in 15 years of business, this is the first time someone has sat across from me without knowing exactly who I am. And I like that. Vanessa stood up, unsteady. I should go. Stay. It wasn't a request or a demand. It was something in between, a word that carried both promise and mystery. I can't, she whispered, even though she wanted to sit back down and keep talking to him. You can, Lucas said, standing up too. He was tall, making her feel small, but not in a bad way. Have dinner with me, Vanessa. Not because of a blind date, but because we both know there's something here worth exploring. Her heart pounded. This was crazy. He was important and powerful. She was just an ordinary girl working 2 jobs to pay her bills. Things like this didn't happen in real life. But when she looked into his deep gray eyes, she made a decision. She sat back down. The rest of dinner felt like something out of a dream. The candlelight, the conversation. It was all so perfect. Vanessa hadn't felt heard or seen in a long time. Lucas asked real questions, ones that made her think. You never told me how you knew my last name, Vanessa said, sipping the fancy wine he had picked out. Lucas smirked. I have my ways. That's not an answer. No, he admitted, watching her closely. It's not. A shiver ran down her spine. She should have been scared of how mysterious he was. Instead, she leaned in, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. You're used to getting your way, aren't you? She asked. Always, he said without hesitation. That should bother me. His lips twitched. But it doesn't. I haven't decided yet, she admitted. Their server arrived with dessert, rich chocolate with berries. Vanessa hadn't ordered it. Neither had Lucas, at least not when she had been listening. You're doing it again, she said, making decisions for me. I like to think of it as anticipating needs. He pushed the plate toward her. Try it. Vanessa picked up her fork, feeling his eyes follow her every move. The dessert was amazing. Of course it was. Everything about this night was. And that scared her. This isn't real, she said softly, setting her fork down. Lucas's expression darkened. Explain. This. She gestured between them. The fancy restaurant, the expensive wine, the way you talk. It's like something from a movie. But tomorrow, I'll go back to my real life. 2 jobs, student loans, and a tiny apartment. And you'll go back to whatever world you live in. You think I'm playing a game? His voice had a sharp edge now. Aren't you? Vanessa met his gaze. You let me sit here, knowing I was at the wrong table. You've controlled this whole evening, and you still haven't told me what you do. Lucas was silent for a long moment. Then, he slowly traced the stem of his wine glass. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and serious. "Google me." Vanessa blinked. "What?" "Take out your phone. Search my name. Lucas Martins." With shaky fingers, Vanessa pulled out her phone and typed in his name. What she saw made her breath catch. Headlines filled the screen. Martins Enterprises CEO takes over rival company. The Wolf of Wall Street meets Silicon Valley. Youngest Fortune 500 CEO. Martins's net worth hits $4.2 billion. Vanessa's phone slipped from her hands and clattered onto the table. She couldn't even finish the sentence. "Yes," Lucas said quietly. "Does that change things?" She looked up at him. He was a billionaire, a powerful businessman. Why hadn't he told her? "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. He sighed. "Because for the first time in years, someone looked at me and saw a person. Not a CEO, not a billionaire. No deal is to be made. Just me." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. A spark shot through her. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Is it?" Lucas leaned in, his presence filling the space between them. "Or is it the most real thing either of us has felt in a long time?" Before Vanessa could answer, a bright flash went off nearby. Then another. She turned to see two men with cameras at the restaurant's entrance, pointing straight at them. Lucas's expression darkened instantly. He stood up in one smooth motion, placing himself between her and the photographers. "Car. Now," he said to someone. A suited man appeared at their table. "This way, sir." Lucas turned back to Vanessa, holding out his hand. "Come with me." Vanessa stared at his hand. This was more than just running away from cameras. This was a choice, to step into his world or stay in hers. "I can't," she whispered, even though every part of her wanted to take his hand. Lucas's eyes softened. "You are exactly who I want, Vanessa." Then more flashes. The restaurant staff tried to block the photographers, but they kept pushing forward. Vanessa had seconds to decide. What would she do? Vanessa could already picture the headlines. "Mysterious woman spotted dining with Boston's most eligible CEO." "My car is just around the corner," she said, gathering her things. "Not a chance." Lucas's hand pressed gently against the small of her back, his touch both protective and possessive. "You're with me now. That means you're under my protection." The weight of his words lingered, thick with meaning. Vanessa wanted to protest, to assert her independence, but the warmth of his touch sent her thoughts scattering. They moved through the restaurant in sync, Lucas's security team. When had they even appeared? Forming a protective barrier between them and the photographers. A sleek black car idled at the side entrance, its engine humming softly. "Trust me," Lucas whispered as he opened the door for her. Vanessa hesitated, just for a moment, before slipping into the car's luxurious leather interior. Lucas followed, and the vehicle pulled away smoothly. Inside the dimly lit space, the air between them was charged. Vanessa could feel the heat radiating from Lucas's body. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining with a certainty that sent a thrill and a shiver through her. "I should take you home," he murmured, though his grip on her hand tightened slightly. "I should let you," Vanessa admitted, her pulse racing. "But I won't." He turned to face her, his sharp features illuminated by passing streetlights. "Not until you understand something." "What?" she whispered. "This isn't a game. It's not a whim or a passing fancy." His free hand cupped her cheek, and suddenly, Vanessa forgot how to breathe. "I want you, Vanessa Mars. All of you. And I'm not a man who loses what he wants." The possessiveness in his voice should have unsettled her. The intensity in his eyes should have sent her running. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her body making choices her mind wasn't ready to confront. "Where are we going?" she asked. Lucas's thumb brushed her lower lip, making her world shrink to that single point of contact. "Somewhere we can talk," he murmured. "Without cameras. Without interruptions." His voice dropped lower. "Without pretense." As the car glided through Boston's nighttime streets, Vanessa knew she was crossing a line. She was stepping into something dangerous, something she didn't fully understand. But with Lucas's hand in hers and his promises lingering in the air, danger had never felt so much like destiny. The elevator ascended smoothly, the numbers ticking upward. Vanessa's heartbeat matched their steady climb. Floor 47, 48, 49. Penthouse, Lucas said quietly beside her, though she had already guessed. Everything about him screamed top floor, highest point, looking down at the world below. When the doors slid open, Vanessa's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the space, offering a breathtaking, panoramic view of Boston's glittering skyline. The Charles River shimmered like a ribbon of stars, while city lights spread beneath them like a galaxy pulled down to Earth. Vanessa trailed off, stepping toward the glass, almost in a trance. Home, Lucas supplied, watching her reaction with unreadable gray eyes. At least, that's what the real estate agent called it. Something in his tone made Vanessa turn to face him. But not to you, she guessed. Lucas shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over a sleek leather chair. It's where I sleep, he admitted, where I work when I'm not at the office. But home! He let out a small, humorless laugh. I'm not sure I know what that means anymore. His honesty caught her off guard. It was a first crack in his perfectly controlled facade, and something inside her chest tightened. Would you like a drink? He asked, moving toward a bar that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel. Water, please. Vanessa needed to keep her head clear. Everything about this moment, standing in his penthouse, surrounded by a luxury she could barely comprehend, felt surreal. Lucas poured her water into a crystal glass and made himself a whiskey. When he returned, he stood close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. But he didn't touch her. Ask, he said. Ask what? Whatever questions are running through your mind right now. His voice was steady, his gaze locked onto hers. I see them in your eyes. Vanessa took a sip of water, giving herself a moment. Why did you bring me here? Why did you bring me here? Because I wanted you somewhere safe, away from cameras, somewhere private. His eyes never wavered. Somewhere I could be honest with you. About what? About what I want, he said simply, setting his glass down. About who I am. About why. From the moment you sat at my table, I haven't been able to think about anything but you. Vanessa's pulse roared in her ears. That's not possible. You're Lucas Martins. Her voice faltered. You probably have supermodels and actresses throwing themselves at you. I do, he admitted bluntly. The directness of his answer startled her. And yet, none of them have ever interested me the way you do. Vanessa swallowed. Why? He took a step closer, and suddenly, she was backing up, her spine pressing against the cool glass of the window. Because they want Lucas Martin, CEO. His voice was low, controlled. The bank accounts, the power, the status. Another step forward. But you, he studied her, his gaze unwavering. You sat across from a stranger and showed him who you really are. Your dreams, your struggles, your determination. You weren't trying to impress me. You weren't trying to be anything but yourself. His hand came up, brushing gently against her cheek. Vanessa's eyes fluttered closed at the warmth of his touch. Vanessa, his voice softened. Open your eyes. She did. His face was inches from hers, his expression raw, more open than it had been all evening. I need you to understand something, he murmured. I'm not a good man. The quiet confession sent a shiver down her spine. I'm ruthless in business, he continued. I destroy companies because I can. I make decisions that ruin lives, and I don't lose sleep over them. His thumb traced a curve of her lower lip. But with you, his voice was barely above a whisper. With you, I want to be better. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Vanessa should have been terrified. She should have run from the man who so easily admitted his own ruthlessness. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. "This is insane," Vanessa whispered. "We just met. You don't even know me." "I know enough," Lucas said, his other hand sliding around her waist, pulling her closer. His touch sent shivers down her spine. "I know you work 2 jobs because you refuse to take help from anyone. I know you gave up your dream of becoming a designer to put others first. And I know you have a fire inside you that you try to keep hidden." Vanessa's breath caught. "How?" "I had you investigated the moment you sat down." She stiffened and tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "You what?" "I run a multi-billion-dollar company, Vanessa. I don't take risks with unknown variables." His gaze locked onto hers. "But what I found only made me want you more." Her anger flared. She pushed against his chest. "That's an invasion of privacy. You had no right." "No," he admitted. "I didn't. But I needed to know who you were. What I didn't expect was to find someone so real." "Let me go," she demanded, but her body betrayed her, melting into his touch even as she protested. No, his voice was soft but firm. "Not until you understand what's happening here." "What is happening here?" she asked breathlessly. His hand slid from her cheek to the back of her neck, tangling in her hair. "I'm pursuing you, Vanessa Mars. Not as a game, not as a passing whim, but as something I need more than my next breath." "You can't just decide that," she protested. "You can't investigate people and then just decide you want them." "I can," he said simply. "And I have." "This is different," she insisted. His grip gentled, turning into a caress. "For the first time in my life, I want something that can't be bought, something that has to be earned." Vanessa's anger warred with the undeniable pull of desire coursing through her. "I'm not a prize to be won, Lucas." "No," he agreed. "You're so much more than that. You're a woman who deserves everything she's ever dreamed of, and I want to give it to you. I don't want your charity." Lucas let out a low, dark chuckle that sent shivers down her spine. "Charity? No, Vanessa. What I want to give you isn't charity. It's opportunity, partnership, power." His lips brushed against her ear. "Pleasure." The last word made her knees weak. "This isn't we can't." "We can," he murmured, "and we will. But only when you're ready. Only when you understand that this isn't a whim for me. It's a decision, a commitment." Vanessa's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. With trembling hands, she pulled it from her purse, her heart dropping at what she saw. 3 missed calls from Christy and a text message. Her stomach twisted as she read the words. "Oh, God, what is it?" Lucas asked, his tone instantly alert. Wordlessly, she turned the screen toward him. A photo of them from the restaurant was already circulating online, the caption glaring at them like a siren. "Breaking. Business titan Lucas Martin spotted with mystery woman. Gold digger alert." Lucas's jaw clenched, his expression darkening. "I'll handle it." "Handle it how?" Panic rose in her voice. "It's already out there. My name will be everywhere. My jobs. Oh, God, what will people think? Look at me." His voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "No one will dare say a word against you. Not if they want to keep doing business in the city." The sheer authority in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, she felt drawn to the protective fire in his gaze. "I should go," she whispered, but she didn't move. "Stay," Lucas said, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Let me protect you. I can protect myself." "I know." His smile was both dangerous and beautiful. "That's exactly why I want you to let me do it instead." Standing there in his arms, high above the city she'd always called home, Vanessa knew she was at a crossroads. One path led back to the safe, predictable life she had always known. The other led straight into Lucas Martin's world of power, passion, and possession. And despite every rational thought screaming at her to run, Vanessa found herself stepping toward the unknown. Vanessa woke to sunlight streaming through the towering floor-to-ceiling windows. Gentle fingers traced soft patterns on her bare shoulder, sending warm shivers down her spine. For a moment, she kept her eyes closed, savoring the luxurious sheets and the solid presence of Lucas beside her. They hadn't done more than kiss last night, deep, desperate kisses that left her breathless, but sleeping in his arms had felt more intimate than anything she'd ever experienced. "I know you're awake," Lucas murmured, his voice husky with sleep. Vanessa opened her eyes to find him propped on one elbow, watching her. His usually polished hair was deliciously tousled, and at some point in the night, he had discarded his dress shirt, leaving him in a white undershirt that did nothing to hide his sculpted physique. "Good morning," she whispered, suddenly shy. His response was to lean down and claim her lips in a kiss, one that started tender but quickly turned possessive. Vanessa melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body arching instinctively closer. When he finally pulled away, his gray eyes were dark with desire. "You have no idea what you do to me. Show me." She breathed before she could stop herself. A low growl rumbled in his chest. But instead of kissing her again, he reached for something on the nightstand. Vanessa's stomach dropped as she recognized the front page of the Boston Globe. Their picture was splashed across the business section, the headline making her blood run cold. "Martins's mystery woman, social climber or something more. Lucas, this ends now." His voice was sharp and controlled, the voice of a man used to issue commands. He grabbed his phone and dialed. "Mark, execute Protocol 7. Yes, all of them, and get Richard from Legal on the line." Vanessa sat up, clutching the sheets despite being fully dressed. "What are you doing?" "Protecting what's mine." He ended the call and turned back to her. "By noon, every major publication in Boston will receive a legal warning. Any speculation about your character will result in immediate consequences. My team is already working to take down the worst posts. You can't just—" Vanessa shook her head. "That's not how social media works." Lucas's smile was sharp, predatory. "You'd be surprised what I can do, Vanessa. Money talks. And in this case, it will make it very clear that slandering you has consequences." She should have been outraged. She should have been terrified. But instead, she felt something else entirely. Tears burning behind her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why go to all this trouble for someone you just met?" Lucas's expression softened as he reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek. "Because in less than 24 hours, he said quietly, "you have become the most important thing in my world." His thumb traced her bottom lip, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And I protect what matters to me." The intensity of his words unsettled her. "This is moving too fast," she whispered. "Is it?" Lucas traced her bottom lip with his thumb. "Or is it moving exactly as fast as it needs to?" Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with incoming messages. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. "What is it?" Vanessa asked, already dreading the answer. "Your workplace." He turned the screen toward her, revealing an email from the community college where she worked. They had called an emergency board meeting to discuss her recent publicity. "No," Vanessa whispered, horror washing over her. "They can't fire me for having dinner with someone." "They won't," Lucas said firmly, "because in about 10 minutes, the college is going to receive notice of a very generous donation from the Martins Foundation, one that comes with certain conditions." "Lucas, no." Vanessa scrambled out of bed, putting distance between them. "You can't buy my job security." He stood as well, his movements controlled and deliberate. "I can and I will. Unless you prefer, I buy the college outright." "Stop it." She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "This isn't a game. This is my life, my career." "Exactly," he said, crossing the room until she was backed against the window overlooking the city. "It's your life, which means it's now my priority. That's not how relationships work. Is that what this is?" His voice dropped lower, sending shivers down her spine. A relationship? Vanessa's breath caught. I don't know what this is. Then let me be clear. He placed his hands on either side of her head, caging her between his body and the glass. This is me choosing you. This is me ensuring that nothing and no one threatens what we're building here. This is me showing you exactly what it means to be mine. I'm not a possession, she whispered, though her body betrayed her by leaning into his warmth. No, he agreed. You're something far more valuable. You're the woman who makes me feel human again. His lips brushed her temple. The woman who looks at me and sees past the money, past the power, to something I thought I'd lost years ago. And what's that? She asked, barely able to breathe. My heart. The admission seemed to surprise even him. God help me, Vanessa, but you've walked right past every wall I built and straight into my heart. She should have run. She should have grabbed her things and fled from this man who could reshape reality with a phone call, who spoke of possession and protection in the same breath as love. Instead, she found herself reaching up to trace the strong line of his jaw. This terrifies me, she admitted. Good. He turned his head and kissed her palm. It terrifies me too. I haven't felt fear in years. Not since I made my first million. But you. His hand slid down to grip her hip. You make me feel everything. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mr. Martins. The legal team is assembled in the home office. Lucas didn't move. His eyes locked on Vanessa. Your choice, he said softly. I can make all of this go away. The photos, the speculation, the threat to your job. Or, she whispered, or you can embrace it. Stand with me. Let the world see exactly what you mean to me. His grip tightened possessively. Let me show them that you're not some gold digger or social climber. You're the woman who brought Lucas Martins to his knees. Vanessa's heart pounded. By doing what? Accidentally sitting at your table. By being exactly who you are. He leaned in until his lips brushed her ear. Strong. Independent. Utterly captivating. Another knock. Sir, time-sensitive matters require your attention. Choose, Vanessa, Lucas whispered against her skin. Hide from this or face it with me. But know that either way, I'm not letting you go. Standing there, caught between the cold glass and Lucas's warmth, Vanessa made her third life-changing decision in 24 hours. Okay, she breathed. Okay, what? Show them. She met his gaze steadily. Show them what we are. Lucas's smile was both beautiful and dangerous. Sir, the voice called again. Send them in, Lucas commanded, not taking his eyes off Vanessa. It's time to change the narrative. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of lawyers, press releases, and carefully planned public appearances. Vanessa watched in awe as Lucas's team took control of the narrative, transforming it from a scandalous affair to a modern fairy tale romance. Every move was calculated, every statement precisely crafted. Now, she sat in Lucas's executive office on the top floor of Martin's tower, struggling to recognize her own life. The statement goes live in an hour, Lucas said, hanging up his phone. His suit was impeccable as always, but Vanessa had learned to notice the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched when he was worried. Are you sure you're ready for this? Vanessa smoothed down the fabric of her new designer dress, one of Lucas's gifts and probably more expensive than her monthly rent. Do I have a choice? She asked. Always. He crossed the room, kneeling before a chair and taking her hands in his. Say the word, and I'll shut it all down. We can disappear to my island in the Caribbean until this blows over. The casual mention of owning an island still made her head spin. Running away won't solve anything. No, he agreed, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. But it would keep you safe. I don't need. A knock interrupted them. Mr. Martins, they're ready for you in the boardroom. Lucas's expression hardened. Tell them to wait. Sir, the shareholders. I said wait. Lucas's voice carried the authority that demanded absolute obedience. When they were alone again, he reached up to cup her face. Last chance to back out. Vanessa leaned into his touch. "I'm not going anywhere." His kiss was swift but fierce, leaving her breathless. "That's my girl." The boardroom was intimidating. Mahogany and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of Boston's financial district. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around the massive table, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. "That's my girl." The boardroom was intimidating. Mahogany and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of Boston's financial district. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around the massive table, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lucas began, his hand resting possessively on Vanessa's lower back as he guided her to the head of the table. Vanessa could feel the tension in the boardroom as Lucas addressed the executives seated around the long mahogany table. "I believe you all know why we're here," he said, his tone measured but firm. An older man with steel gray hair, Richard, folded his hands together. "The real question is, do you?" His gaze was sharp. "This indiscretion has already cost us market points." Vanessa felt Lucas stiffen beside her. His response came slow and deliberate. "Choose your next words very carefully, Richard." A woman in her 50s, Patricia, interjected smoothly. "The board has concerns. Your personal life is your own, of course, but when it starts affecting shareholder value—" "My personal life," Lucas interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet, "is not up for discussion. Not even by this board." He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "The press will say exactly what we tell them to say." He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Unless anyone here would like to experience firsthand what happens when they cross me." The silence that followed was thick, the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Vanessa's skin prickled. She had seen glimpses of this ruthless side of Lucas before, but never in full force. Perhaps, she thought, it was time they heard from her. "Or maybe," Vanessa said, her voice steady, "what you want to know is whether I'm a liability." Lucas's grip on her back tightened, a silent warning, but she pressed on. "You're worried that I'm after his money, that I'll create a scandal, that I'll distract him from running this company." She met their gazes one by one. "I understand those concerns. From a business perspective, they make sense." "Vanessa," Lucas warned, but she continued, "here's what you need to know." She straightened her spine, drawing confidence from somewhere deep inside. "I have my own career, my own ambitions. I'm not here for Lucas's money or his power. I'm here because, against all odds, we found something real." A long silence followed. Then Richard scoffed. "Pretty words, but actions speak louder. And right now, there are rumors circulating about insider trading." Vanessa felt her stomach drop. "What?" Lucas's voice turned to ice. "Explain." A tablet was passed down the table. Vanessa's eyes widened as she read the headlines and social media speculation. Claims that she had made suspicious stock trades just before Martin's Enterprises announced a major acquisition. "This is impossible," she protested. "I don't even own stocks." Patricia pursed her lips. "Regardless, the SEC is asking questions." Lucas let out a low, dangerous laugh. "The SEC? You want to play that game, Patricia?" His stare alone made her pale slightly. "If anyone in this room," he continued, voice cold and cutting, "is responsible for these rumors, they should know that my response will be thorough." He let the words sink in, watching as a few board members shifted uncomfortably. Then, straightening to his full height, he said, "Let me be perfectly clear. Vanessa is not up for discussion. Not in this room. Not in the press. Not anywhere. She is part of my life, which means she is untouchable. And anyone who forgets that will deal with me personally." Richard opened his mouth, but Lucas cut him off. "The shareholders," he said, "will be thrilled when our Q3 numbers show record profits." Which they will. Unless, of course, someone here wishes to test me. The message was received. The topic was closed. Vanessa sat in awe as Lucas shifted gears seamlessly. commanding the room as he directed billion-dollar decisions with the ease of ordering coffee. But beneath the polished confidence, she sensed it, his rage, simmering just beneath the surface. An hour later, in the elevator, Vanessa finally voiced a question that had been gnawing at her. "The SEC investigation, is it real?" Lucas turned to her, his expression unreadable. Then, in one swift motion, he pulled her into his arms, his hold fierce, protective. "It's a warning shot," he admitted. "Someone on the board trying to force my hand. By targeting you," she whispered. His grip tightened. "By threatening what matters to me most." His eyes darkened with controlled fury. "They'll regret that decision." Vanessa reached up, her fingers grazing his jaw. "Don't do anything rash." Lucas's chuckle was dark. "Rash?" His lips brushed her forehead. "No, sweetheart. What I'm going to do will be very, very calculated." A cold knot formed in her stomach. "You're scaring me." "Good." He stepped back, just as the elevator door slid open. Standing in his office, Christy, Lucas's assistant, looked pale. "Sir," she said, holding up her phone, "we have a problem." Lucas took the phone. On the screen was a photo, taken from a distance, showing Vanessa leaving his penthouse that morning. The headline made her blood run cold. "Martin's mistress. The truth about his secret lover." Lucas went rigid. His voice came sharp-clipped. "Mark!" His head of security appeared instantly. "Lock down every device in this building," Lucas ordered. "Find the leak. Now." Vanessa's heart pounded. "What's happening?" Lucas turned to her, his expression unreadable, but his words sent a shiver down her spine. "War, sweetheart," he said grimly. Someone just declared war. The storm had begun, and she was at the center of it. The headline spread like wildfire, invading every space Vanessa tried to escape to. Martin's secret affair. The woman behind the billionaire. Gold digger or true love. Inside the scandal-rocking Boston's elite. Sources reveal Martin's lover linked to corporate espionage. Sitting in the living room of Lucas's penthouse, Vanessa gripped the remote tightly, watching as the accusations played across the television screen. "They're saying I'm a corporate spy," she whispered, "that I seduced you to gain inside information. They're desperate," Lucas said, pouring himself a drink. His fingers gripped the crystal decanter so tightly it nearly cracked. "And they're going to regret every word." Vanessa wasn't sure whether to be reassured or terrified, because Lucas Martins wasn't just defending himself. He was preparing for battle. Lucas's company was in trouble. The stock had dropped, and the board of directors was panicking. But Lucas didn't care about any of that. The only thing that mattered to him was Vanessa. Vanessa was frustrated. "This isn't just about us," she said. "People could lose their jobs." "The only thing that matters is keeping you safe," Lucas replied firmly. Vanessa sighed. "I lost my jobs today. Both of them. The college fired me because of all the attention, and the bookstore doesn't want reporters hanging around." Lucas's face darkened. "I'll fix it." "No," Vanessa said, stepping away. "You can't just throw money at every problem." "Watch me." Vanessa shook her head. "This isn't a game, Lucas. Someone is trying to ruin us, and they're using me to get to you." Lucas's eyes turned cold. "They're using fear. But they don't know what they're dealing with." Before Vanessa could respond, Lucas's head of security, Mark, rushed into the room. "Sir, we found something." Lucas tensed. "Show me." Mark handed him a tablet, and as Lucas read, his face grew more dangerous. "Lucas?" Vanessa asked, worried. "Remember Richard from the board meeting?" Lucas's voice was quiet but sharp. "He's been leaking information to our competitors. The rumors, the SEC investigation. It was all him." Vanessa's stomach twisted. Mark hesitated. "Sir, there's more. Someone has been changing Vanessa's records, making it look like she's a spy." Vanessa's heart stopped. "What?" "The changes were made in the last 24 hours, but they're backdated to make it seem like it's been going on for years." Lucas gripped his glass so tightly that it shattered in his hand. Vanessa gasped. "Lucas, you're bleeding." She grabbed a napkin to help him, but he barely noticed. "Mark," Lucas said, his voice icy. "Call the jet. Have it ready in an hour." "No," Vanessa said firmly. "We're not running." "This isn't running," Lucas told her. "It's a strategic retreat while I take care of this." "I won't hide," Vanessa insisted. "If I leave now, people will think the rumors are true." Lucas stared at her, then finally nodded. "Mark, cancel the jet. Instead, I want a press conference tomorrow morning." Mark looked surprised. "Sir, with everything happening." "Tomorrow morning," Lucas repeated. "It's time to change the game." After Mark left, Vanessa asked, "What are you planning?" Lucas smirked. "I'm going to show Boston exactly who they're messing with." He pulled her close. "They want to play dirty? Fine, but they've forgotten something important." "What's that?" "I didn't become who I am by playing nice." Vanessa noticed his bleeding hand again. "You're still hurt." "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." Vanessa grabbed the first aid kit and gently bandaged his hand. "What's going to happen to Richards? By this time tomorrow, he won't have a career left." Vanessa shivered. "That's not enough for you, is it?" Lucas touched her cheek. "No, he tried to hurt you. That means I'll destroy everything he has." She should have been afraid of how cold he sounded, but instead, she felt safe. "And the press conference?" she asked. Lucas tilted her chin up. "I need you to do something for me first." "What?" "Trust me." "Completely." Vanessa thought about everything that had happened since she accidentally sat at the wrong table. About how Lucas always protected her. About how much she cared for him. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." Lucas's kiss was deep and fierce. "Then let me show Boston what happens when someone threatens a woman I love." Vanessa's breath caught. "Love?" Neither of them had said it before. "Yes," Lucas said firmly. "I love you, Vanessa Mars. And I'm going to make sure the whole world knows." As his lips found hers again, Vanessa knew everything would change tomorrow. The press conference. Lucas's revenge. Their public declaration. But with Lucas holding her, she wasn't afraid. Let them try to tear them apart. They had no idea who they were up against. Vanessa stood nervously in a fancy dress Lucas had given her. Christy, her friend, squeezed her hand. "You don't have to do this," Christy said. "You could take Lucas's offer. The island, the escape." Vanessa shook her head. "Running won't fix anything." Just then Lucas walked in. He looked powerful in his expensive suit, but Vanessa could see the tension in his eyes. "Everything's ready," he said, pulling Vanessa into his arms. "Last chance to change your mind." "I thought you said you trusted me," she whispered. "I do," Lucas said. "But once we do this, there's no going back." "Good," Vanessa said, standing tall. "I'm tired of hiding." Lucas smiled proudly. "That's my girl." He turned to Christy. "The car is waiting to take you somewhere safe." Christy hesitated, but Vanessa nodded. "Go. I'll be fine." After Christy left, Lucas held Vanessa's face in his hands. "No matter what happens, remember what we talked about." "I trust you," Vanessa said. He kissed her quickly, then said, "Let's go change the game." Facing the reporters. Bright lights flashed as they stepped into the crowded press room. Cameras clicked and reporters shouted questions. Lucas placed his hand on Vanessa's back, steadying her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lucas said, his voice strong and clear, "thank you for coming. I have a statement to make, and then I'll take a few questions." Vanessa stood behind him, keeping her head high. "There have been many rumors about my relationship with Vanessa Mars," Lucas continued. "False accusations, lies, and attempts to damage our reputations. Today, I will set the record straight." The room went silent. "First, the accusations of illegal trading and spying are completely false," he said firmly. "We have proof that someone made up these lies to harm us." The person responsible, former board member Richard Henderson, is now under federal investigation. Gasps filled the room. Reporters frantically typed on their laptops. Any news outlet that keeps spreading these lies, Lucas added, will face major legal action. My team has already filed lawsuits against 3 media companies. Vanessa watched the reporters shift uncomfortably. Lucas wasn't just defending himself. He was warning them. And now, Lucas continued, about my relationship with Vanessa Mars. He turned and took her hand, pulling her forward. The rumors end today, he said. Vanessa is not my mistress. She is not a scandal. She is a woman I love, the woman I want to spend my life with. And as of last night, she is my fiancée. The room exploded with questions. Vanessa barely heard them. All she could focus on was Lucas, the warmth of his hand, and the sparkling ring on her finger. Mr. Martins, this is quite sudden. A reporter called. Did Miss Mars know about this announcement? Lucas raised his hand, silencing them. One more thing, he said. His smile was sharp. As of this morning, I have taken control of several major news companies in Boston. Any publication that spreads false stories about Vanessa will find their leadership replaced. Vanessa's eyes widened. He hadn't told her that part. Additionally, Lucas said, my legal team has just handed out documents proving who was behind the false rumors and attempted scandals. The room turned into chaos as reporters grabbed the packets of information. One final note, Lucas said, his voice turning cold. To those who tried to use Vanessa against me, you failed. And you've made a powerful enemy. I will destroy everything you built, piece by piece. Then he softened and turned to Vanessa. That's all for today. My fiancé and I have a celebration to attend. Reporters shouted questions as Lucas led Vanessa away. In the private elevator, Lucas pulled Vanessa into his arms. You bought newspapers? She asked, still in shock. Multiple newspapers? He chuckled. I told you I'd protect you. By buying the entire news industry in Boston, she asked. By making sure no one can ever use the press to hurt you again, he said, his fingers gently brushing her cheek. I own it all now. Vanessa should have been surprised, maybe even scared by how powerful Lucas was. But instead, she smiled and stood on her tiptoes to kiss him. She wasn't afraid, because no matter what happened, she knew Lucas would always fight for her. Vanessa laughed softly, shaking her head. You're terrifying, you know that? Only to people who try to take what's mine, Lucas said, brushing his thumb across her lips. And you, Vanessa Mars, are very much mine. She smirked. Vanessa Martin soon, she corrected. Lucas's eyes darkened at the name. Say it again. Vanessa Martins, she whispered with a smile. His kiss was firm, full of possessiveness. Good. Let them see how far I'll go to protect you. Let them understand that messing with you means war with me. The elevator doors opened, leading them into their penthouse. Vanessa glanced at the ring on her finger. It sparkled, sending little rainbows across the walls. Any regrets? Lucas asked, watching her closely. Vanessa thought about everything that had led to this moment. The wrong table at the restaurant, the media circus, the attacks against them, and now Lucas's bold public declaration. None, she said firmly. You. His smile was both dangerous and beautiful. Only that I didn't find you sooner. Lucas kissed her again, and Vanessa knew their battle wasn't over. There would be more headlines and more people trying to tear them apart. But standing here, wearing his ring, his name, and his love, she felt invincible. Let them try. The engagement party was at the most luxurious hotel in Boston, but Vanessa couldn't focus on the celebration. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching Lucas argue in a corner with Mark, his most trusted advisor. Even from across the room, she could see the tension in his shoulders. He's worried about you, a voice said. Vanessa turned to find Christy, her best friend, holding 2 glasses of champagne. The threats are getting worse, Christy said. Vanessa took a glass but didn't drink. How do you know about the threats? Christy sighed. Because I'm not just your best friend anymore, she admitted. I'm also the new head of PR for Martin's Enterprises. Lucas hired me this morning. Vanessa nearly dropped her glass. He what? He asked me. Actually, Christy said. He needed someone he could trust. Someone who would protect you as fiercely as he does. She gave Vanessa a knowing look. He's trying to build a wall around you, Em. The question is, are you going to let him? Before Vanessa could answer, Lucas walked up, his expression dark and urgent. We need to leave, he said. Vanessa frowned. Lucas, what's going on? Richard's dead. Vanessa's stomach dropped. What? A car accident, Lucas said grimly. But it's too perfect, too convenient. He placed a firm hand on her lower back, already steering her toward the exit. Mark's team picked up chatter. It's a message, he explained. A warning. To us. Vanessa's heart pounded. This isn't just business anymore, is it? Lucas shook his head. No, this is war. The ride back to the penthouse was tense. Lucas was on the phone, giving sharp orders while his security team checked the building. Vanessa sat beside him, her thoughts racing. It wasn't just Richard, was it? She finally asked. Lucas ended his call and turned to her. They found something in his car. Files. Vanessa's breath caught. Files about what? About you, Lucas said, his jaw tightening. Your childhood in Phoenix. Your mother's medical records. Your student loans. Things that weren't even in my background check. Vanessa felt a chill run down her spine. How long have they been watching me? That's what scares me, Lucas admitted. He took her hand, squeezing it tightly. These files predate our meeting. Someone's been tracking you for months, maybe longer. But why? She asked, shaking her head. I was nobody before I met you. Lucas's expression darkened. Or maybe, he said slowly, our meeting wasn't an accident after all. When they arrived at the penthouse, security guards were everywhere. Mark met them at the door, holding a tablet. Sir, he said, his face serious. We've confirmed the car crash was staged, a professional hit. And there's more. He hesitated, glancing at Vanessa. Show me, Lucas demanded. Mark handed over the tablet. As Lucas scrolled through the information, his face changed from controlled anger to pure rage. Lucas? Vanessa touched his arm. What is it? Wordlessly, he passed her the tablet. Vanessa's eyes widened in horror. The screen showed surveillance photos of her, walking to work, shopping, and having coffee with Christy. But these weren't the recent pictures from the media. These were old, from months before she had even met Lucas. In several of them, she noticed something that made her stomach twist. A familiar figure in the background. Her hands trembled. Oh, no, she whispered. You recognize him, Lucas said. It wasn't a question. Cornell Sam, she said, her voice barely audible. He used to come into the bookstore all the time. He was always friendly, always asking questions about my life, my dreams. Lucas's expression turned ice cold. He works for Luron Industries, my biggest competitor. Vanessa's mind spun. I don't understand, but... She trailed off as the pieces started falling into place. They set me up, she breathed. They orchestrated our meeting. Lucas clenched his fists. The blind date that never showed. The accidental empty chair at my table. It was all planned. But why? Vanessa asked, feeling sick. They needed a weakness, Mark said. Mr. Martins has a reputation for being untouchable, uncompromised. They needed a scandal. Vanessa swallowed hard. A gold digger story. They wanted to make Lucas look foolish. To make investors lose confidence in him. Except it backfired, Lucas said, pulling her into his arms. Instead of a scandal, they had given him something else. Something he never knew he needed. Vanessa, she pressed her face against his chest. And now they're desperate, she whispered. Lucas stroked her hair. The scandal failed. The SEC investigation failed. The media attacks failed. Now they're resorting to violence. Sir, Mark interrupted. Luron's private jet just filed a flight plan to Boston. He's coming personally. Lucas smirked, but it wasn't a happy smirk. It was cold and dangerous. Finally, he said, he's showing his hand. Vanessa pulled back to meet his eyes. What are you going to do? End this, Lucas said simply. She searched his face. How? His fingers traced her lips as he smiled, sharp, lethal. By giving Luron exactly what he wants, he said. A meeting. Tomorrow morning. Mark tensed. It's a trap? Of course it is, Lucas said, his voice like steel. He looked at Vanessa, his eyes burning with fierce determination. But he's forgotten something important, he added. What's that? Vanessa asked. I'm not the same man I was before I met you, Lucas said. I'm not just fighting for my company anymore. His grip tightened around her. I'm fighting for us. Lucas, Vanessa whispered. Do you trust me? He asked. His voice was intense, filled with unshakable resolve. Vanessa took a deep breath, looking into the eyes of the man who had just declared war on their enemies. Yes, she said. I trust you. He kissed her forehead gently. Lorenzo thinks he can use you to destroy me, but he's wrong. Instead, he's given me something worth fighting for. Vanessa should have been scared by the cold determination in Lucas's voice. But instead, she felt stronger because of it. What do you need me to do? She asked. Lucas's smile was fierce and proud. Be exactly who you are, the strong woman who stands beside me, not behind me. But what if it's a trap? Then we walk right into it together, he said, pressing a possessive kiss to her lips. Lorenzo made one big mistake in his plan. What was that? He thought you were just a pawn, Lucas said, his eyes blazing with intensity. He never expected you to be my queen. As security teams moved around them, making plans for the battle ahead, Vanessa realized something important. This wasn't just Lucas's fight anymore. It was theirs. Lorenzo was about to find out what happened when he tried to destroy a love he could never control. The next morning, the sun rose over Boston, casting golden light over the city. Vanessa stood by the penthouse window, watching as the financial district slowly came to life. Today was the day everything would change. You should be sleeping, Lucas said from behind her. His voice was rough with exhaustion. He hadn't rested all night, too busy preparing for what was to come. So should you, she replied, turning to face him. She could see the strain in his eyes, even as he stood tall, powerful, and in control. Come here, he said softly. She stepped into his arms, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something that was just him. Tell me again why I can't be at the meeting, she murmured. Because Lorenzo expects it, Lucas explained, his fingers tracing small circles on her back. He'll be watching for you, waiting to use you against me. And instead, you'll be at the SEC office with Christie, handing over all the proof of Lorenzo's corruption and corporate spying, Lucas said with a smirk. Vanessa smiled against his chest. While you keep him distracted? Distracted, Lucas repeated, a dangerous edge to his voice. That's one way to put it. She pulled back to meet his gaze. Promise me you won't do anything reckless. He let out a low chuckle. Sweetheart, everything I've done since meeting you has been reckless. I'm serious. So am I, he whispered, cupping her face in his hands. Lorenzo tried to use you to destroy me. Instead, he made me realize what I truly want. Now, he has to pay for threatening that. Before Vanessa could say more, Mark, Lucas's right-hand man, appeared in the doorway. Sir, the market opens in an hour. Everything is ready. Lucas nodded but didn't take his eyes off Vanessa. Launch Phase 1. Mark disappeared, already making calls. Vanessa could feel the tension in the room as Lucas's body tensed. What's Phase 1? She asked. The beginning of the end, he said simply, turning away to pour coffee from the machine he had installed just for her. By noon, everything would change. By 1 p.m., Lorenzo Industries stock would be crashing. By 2 p.m., their biggest investors would be pulling out. Lucas's smile was sharp, dangerous. That depends on how our meeting goes, he said. You're going to destroy his company? Vanessa asked. Lucas handed her a cup of coffee. No, I'm going to give him the same choice he tried to force on me. What choice? Everything he has or everything he loves. Lucas's eyes locked onto hers. He thought he was smart using you to get to me, but he never understood what that meant. What does it mean? It means I'd burn the world down to keep you safe, Lucas said without hesitation. He set his cup down and pulled her into his arms again. There's nothing, no company, no fortune, no power, that's worth losing you for. Vanessa's heart pounded at the intensity in his voice. You can't protect me from everything, she whispered. Watch me, Lucas replied. A knock on the door interrupted them. Christy walked in, already dressed in a sharp business suit. The car's ready, she said. Lucas held Vanessa a moment longer before letting go. Remember the plan, he said. No matter what happens, no matter what I hear, I stay with Christy and the security team. Vanessa finished. I know. And if anything feels wrong, I get out immediately and go to the safe house, she promised, touching his face gently. I remember everything we planned. Lucas's kiss was deep and full of emotion, leaving her breathless. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love you too, she said, forcing herself to step back. End this, she added. With pleasure, Lucas replied. The car ride to the SEC offices was tense. Vanessa kept her eyes on her phone, watching as Lorenzo Industries stock started to drop the moment the market opened. News channels were scrambling, trying to figure out what was happening. He's doing it, Christy said, watching the numbers fall. He's bringing down an entire company just to protect you. Not just a company, Vanessa murmured. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. Phase 2 initiated. Stay safe. He's not just destroying Lorenzo's business, Vanessa said, her expression hard. He's tearing down everything Lorenzo has built. Because Lorenzo tried to use you as a weapon against him? Christy asked. Vanessa gave a grim smile. No, because he thought I was just a pawn. He never expected me to be the queen. When they arrived at the SEC offices, the place was buzzing with activity. News of Lorenzo Industries' stock collapse had put everyone on high alert. A senior investigator named Miss Mars greeted them in the conference room. We reviewed the evidence your team sent over, she said. It's thorough. That's one way to put it, Vanessa said, opening her briefcase. She pulled out the files they had prepared. What you're about to see proves that Lorenzo Industries has been involved in market manipulation, corporate espionage, and now, possibly even murder. Murder? The investigator's eyebrows shot up. Richard Henderson's death wasn't an accident, Christy said, laying out photos from the crash scene. And we can prove it. As they walked the SEC team through the evidence, Vanessa's phone buzzed again. A news alert flashed on the screen. Breaking. Lorenzo Industries CEO Francis Lorenzo arrives at Martin's Tower for an emergency meeting. It's starting, Vanessa thought. The next hour flew by in a rush of documents, testimonies, and shocking revelations. One by one, the truth was coming out, and soon, Lorenzo would have no place left to hide. The investigator's face became serious as she read through the evidence. Then, Vanessa's phone lit up with a breaking news alert. Explosion reported at Martin's Tower. Vanessa's heart pounded. She turned to Christy, whispering, Christy, as she showed her the screen. No, Christy said, already dialing her phone. No, no, no. Vanessa's phone rang. Mark was calling. She answered right away. Where is he? She asked, panic in her voice. Safe, Mark said, his voice tense. That explosion was just a distraction. Luron's real target was. Before he could finish, an alarm blared through the building. Security teams rushed into the conference room. We need to move now, someone shouted. Before Vanessa could react, the windows shattered, glass flying everywhere. Smoke filled the room. She felt Christy push her to the ground, shielding her. In the chaos, a familiar voice cut through the air. "Did you think I wouldn't have a backup plan?" Through the thick smoke, Vanessa saw him. Francis Luron, dressed in an expensive suit, surrounded by armed men. His cold smile sent a chill through her. "If I can't destroy Lucas through business," Luron said, nodding to one of his men, "then I'll do it the old-fashioned way." A man grabbed Vanessa's arm. She struggled, but before she could fight back, she felt a sharp prick in her neck. Her last thought before everything went dark was Lucas's promise. "I'd burn the world down to keep you safe." She hoped he meant it. Vanessa woke up to the soft hum of an engine. The world swayed gently around her. Her head hurt, and her memories came back in pieces. The explosion, the SEC office, Luron. Slowly, she opened her eyes. She was inside a private jet. Across from her, Luron sat calmly, flipping through financial reports as if nothing had happened. He glanced up, his French accent more noticeable than usual. "Ah, you're awake. Sorry about the rough handling, but time was not on my side." Vanessa swallowed. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere far away from Lucas Martins's reach," Luron said with a smirk. "Though I doubt that we'll stop him from trying." Right then, the jet satellite phone rang. Luron's smirk widened as he answered it on speaker. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said. Lucas's voice came through, cold as ice. "If you hurt her, there won't be a place on Earth where you can hide." Luron chuckled. Big words for a man who just lost everything. He held up a tablet, showing a live news broadcast. Martin's tower was in flames, smoke filling the Boston sky. Vanessa's heart clenched, but then she remembered Lucas's words that morning. "No matter what you hear." She narrowed her eyes. The tower was empty, she realized. "You evacuated it before the meeting." Luron's smirk faltered for just a second. On the phone, Lucas let out a dark laugh. "You still don't get it, do you, Francis?" Luron leaned back. "I think I do. I have the woman you love. We're at 30,000 feet, and I'm taking her somewhere you'll never find her. Your company is in ruins. Your board is panicking, and soon the world will know you couldn't even protect your own fiancée." Lucas's voice was deadly calm. "Check your phone." Luron frowned and picked up his personal phone. As he read the screen, his face went pale. "Impossible," he whispered. Lucas's voice came through the speaker again. "Want to tell him, Vanessa? Or should I?" Despite everything, Vanessa felt a smile creep onto her lips. She understood now. The SEC evidence, that wasn't the real plan, was it? "No," Lucas confirmed. "That was just to keep Luron busy. The real plan was much simpler." Luron's voice was sharp. "What did you do?" Lucas's tone was full of satisfaction. "While you were so focused on Vanessa, my team was executing a hostile takeover of your company. Every fake company you hid your money in, every secret bank account, every hidden business deal. We found them all. As of 10 minutes ago, I own the majority of Luron Industries." Luron's hand shook as he stared at his phone. "My board would never." "Your board already voted," Lucas interrupted. "They accepted my offer unanimously. Turns out they don't like CEOs who resort to kidnapping and attempted murder." Luron's face twisted with fury. He lunged for his laptop, typing frantically. Vanessa watched as his rage grew. Lucas had done it. Luron had played his game and lost. "You can't do this," Lauren spat, his frustration boiling over. Lucas's voice turned icier. "It's already done." Lauren's hands clenched into fists. "I still have." "You have nothing." Lucas cut him off. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn that plane around. If Vanessa isn't safely in my arms within 2 hours, I won't just take your company. I'll take everything. Your homes, your cars, your personal accounts, all of it will be mine." Lauren sneered. You wouldn't dare. Lucas's tone didn't waver. Test me. See what happens when you threaten the woman I love. Lauren's composure cracked. This was supposed to be simple. A scandal. A distraction to weaken Lucas. But instead, you gave him something worth fighting for, Vanessa said, her voice steady. Something bigger than business or power. Lauren scoffed. Love. He spat the word like it was a curse. How disappointingly ordinary. No, Lucas's voice softened, but his resolve remained unshaken. How extraordinarily powerful. A light flashed on the jet's console. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. Sir, we've received orders from Lauren Industries board to return to Boston immediately. Lauren stared at his phone at Vanessa, at the empire crumbling around him. Finally, his shoulders slumped. Tell them we're turning around. The 2-hour flight back to Boston was tense and silent. Vanessa watched as Lauren aged years before her eyes, his carefully constructed image shattering with every new message confirming his downfall. When they landed, Lucas was waiting on the tarmac. The moment Vanessa stepped onto the jet stairs, he was there, striding forward with power and purpose. She barely made it down before throwing herself into his arms. His kiss was desperate, possessive, his hands roaming her face as if reassuring himself she was real, unharmed. I know, she whispered. I'm okay. I knew you'd come. Always, he murmured. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I will always come for you. Behind them, federal agents swarmed the jet, taking Lauren into custody. Lucas's security team formed a barrier, blocking out the media frenzy. The towers? Vanessa asked softly. It can be rebuilt. Lucas traced her bottom lip with his thumb. You're all that matters. What happens now? His smile was both fierce and tender. Now we build something new. A new company. A new life. Together, he kissed her again, slower this time, full of meaning. I own Lauren Industries now, but I don't want it. I'm thinking of turning it into a foundation, one that helps small businesses, entrepreneurs, dreamers. Vanessa's heart swelled, like a certain aspiring designer, like anyone with the courage to chase their dreams, he said, his eyes locked on hers. You taught me that power and control mean nothing without purpose. You taught me how to love again. She smiled. Lucas Martins, are you becoming a romantic? He smirked. Only for you. Then his expression turned serious. Marry me. You already asked, she teased. I already said yes. No. He shook his head. Marry me now. Today. No more waiting. No more games. No more threats hanging over us. Just you and me, building our empire together. Vanessa thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The wrong table that turned out to be exactly right. The battles they'd fought. The love that had only grown stronger. Yes, she whispered. His kiss was a promise, a declaration, sealing a future written in the language of love, power, and passion. That evening, in an intimate ceremony attended only by Christy and Lucas's closest advisors, Vanessa Mars became Vanessa Martins. Not as part of some corporate strategy, not for PR, but as the culmination of a love story that had defied every calculation, every scheme. As they swayed together during their first dance as husband and wife, the city lights glittering below them like stars, Lucas held her close. Happy, Vanessa gazed at the man who had changed everything, the ruthless businessman who had found his heart. Perfect, she murmured, because sometimes the wrong table turns out to be exactly right. Sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't fairy tales. They're written in corporate boardrooms, in hostile takeovers, in moments of undeniable devotion. And sometimes a woman who was meant to be a pawn becomes the queen who changes everything. Would you have the courage to face a world of power and danger for love, or would you have chosen a simpler, safer life? What would you do if a chance meeting turned into the most intense love story of your life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories.